All right, next up we have Morgan again, because she's very productive. She's going to talk about Gaviota Pass, but now we've moved south, still in the Coast Range. And Shannon's joining her. Shannon,
Yeah, I'm gonna do a
Shannon
little
Crossen.
pop-up. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this.
They're going to talk about 101 through Gaviota Pass, and they are the first, I don't know only, but first wildlife crossing pilot program grant recipient from Federal Highways. So first one in California. First one in California.
Right, so far. So, thank you so much for having us be part of this panel today, or the session. I already introduced myself, so I'll let Shannon introduce herself.
Hi all, I'm Shannon Crossen. I'm a wildlife crossing specialist with Jacobs.
Great, thank you. And our talk today is entitled California's First Wildlife Crossings Pilot Program Grant, the Gaviota Pass Wildlife Connectivity Project. That's a long title. I learned not to make titles. So to get us oriented, the map on the left here shows Caltrans District 5. Our district is located along the central coast of California, and the red star shows the location of the project, which is in the coastal zone of Santa Barbara County. The picture shown is not the actual project location, but it's a pretty good representative image of our coastal highways in District 5. I'd like to start out today with a shout out to our stakeholder group. This project began as the result of local concerns about the rate of roadkill in Gaviota Pass. So in response to these concerns, Caltrans District 5 funded a road ecology study for this particular area. And our goal was to let science lead the way with respect to the connectivity improvements. So we coordinated closely with California Department of Fish and Wildlife Region 5. We also brought in a panel of independent experts to review our study design. In addition, we formed a stakeholder group, and we've met virtually several times a year since 2021. And our goal is to follow the study together and then form a collective vision for the corridor. Next slide.
Okay, is it me?
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna talk really briefly about our study. We're not gonna be able to get into all the details, but we'll give it a whirl here. So I led this project when I was at ICF, so prior to joining Jacobs, and we attempted to do a really fine-tooth comb analysis of this entire corridor through the Gaviota Pass. So this is about a 6-mile corridor of Highway 101. So we're just south of Point Conception. I don't know if you all know where the Gaviota State Park is. We're north of Santa Barbara. This is a very unique, special area. We are on the convergence of 4 different ecoregions. We have well over 300 terrestrial wildlife species. This is, a quintessential biodiversity hotspot. We have really the last undeveloped land in California, and it's actually often called the end of Southern California because it really is the last undeveloped area of Southern California. So it's a very critical place for biodiversity, and it's a very critical place because of the land. But we have a lot of wildlife and a very busy highway going through. So as Morgan alluded to, lots of roadkill and a lot of emerging concerns. So we set out to go into this area and start collecting data, put together a systematic approach to studying roadkill. We deployed wildlife cameras. We split up the study into 3 areas, a northern, a central, and a southern region, because even though it's only a 6-mile corridor, there are some very distinct areas within this landscape, and they are all very tricky and very unique. And this is probably one of the most complicated projects I've ever worked on. So we had to run for our money here. So we developed a lot of data gathering. We went out and assessed every single culvert and bridge in the landscape. We scored them. We identified how they were functioning for wildlife now. We did camera monitoring at 12 structures, weekly roadkill monitoring. We did a landscape connectivity assessment. And then we did a very detailed connectivity enhancement opportunity review, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Lots of partners, lots of interagency coordination, really covering all the bases. The target species were focused on large and medium mammals. We did include considerations of fish. We have Gaviota Creek running through this area, which is critical habitat for the southern steelhead. So we did include aquatic organism passage, fish passage, and other species considerations, but the focus were on these pretty cute critters here that you can see. I think my favorite is the raccoon, but the spotted skunk might come in second. Okay, so wildlife passage assessments, we use the passage assessment system developed by Patty Kramer, Julia Kinch, Sandra Jacobson, a modified version of that. We assessed 26 structures in the study area. And it was pretty interesting to find that we found that no structure or combination of structures to date will accommodate all of our target species. And none of the structures we examined would support mule deer movement, none. So we have a very significant fragmentation on this landscape and very significant passage issues. Camera monitoring, got a lot of images. There are a lot of wildlife out there. A lot of animals are using the structures that are there, predominantly the smaller animals. We had no mule deer passage as anticipated from the passage assessments. Lots of foxes, coyotes, bobcats, striped skunks. We did have mountain lion out there. And I will say that when we were deploying our cameras, we found a mountain lion carcass on the side of the road that had not been previously known about. I'm not going to go into a lot of the data because we don't have time, but we're happy to talk to you about it later. But lots of use, lots of animals out there, lots of opportunity to be making this landscape better for these species. We also have active cattle ranching in the area and active cattle crossings, which present really wonderful opportunities to retrofit and work with those landowners to allow wildlife permeability through those cattle crossings. So some interesting opportunities out there to work with those folks. Roadkill monitoring. So we did weekly roadkill monitoring, and roadkill is obviously occurring throughout the entire study area. We do see some differences in the patterns based on the location, the type of animals. One of the things that I want to mention here is that in the northern portion of the study area, we have both topographic and fencing barriers that are preventing animals from crossing the road, which are likely reducing the level of roadkill that we are observing. So this is a really great example of why we don't want to solely be relying on roadkill to be identifying where we want to be implementing wildlife crossings or other wildlife accommodations. And so we had some really compelling pictures of mule deer stuck at herds of mule deer stuck at cattle crossings that could not cross, but because of the topography and fencing and other factors, they couldn't even get to the road. But we weren't seeing any roadkill in those areas. So that's just a really important factor for us to remember as we're moving through these data and interacting with these types of information to inform our studies. Okay, I don't think we have a lot of time to go into this. Anything you want to add? Okay, we could talk until the cows come home about the data if you want to later. But the fun part to me was pulling it all together and going through this landscape with a fine-tooth comb and identifying all of the opportunities, whether they are small or large or more grandiose, to integrate wildlife accommodations and support connectivity and reduce vehicle collisions on the landscape. And so we did that. We developed a toolbox. We identified site-specific and study-wide opportunities, and we identified 40 opportunities throughout the study area. So there's definitely a choose your adventure here as far as what projects may want to be implemented. And the idea here is that there's an array of options. They are scored. They've been very detailed and meticulously detailed, and that the stakeholder group can come back together with Caltrans and start making decisions based on these to start deciding what they want to do next. And Caltrans,
I'll use this.
Caltrans had, you want to take that? Caltrans had an idea about what to do next.
Yeah, so thank you. See how lucky we are to have had Shannon as part of this. And she really did a wonderful job working with our stakeholders too and engaging them. So, so she was wrapping up the wildlife crossing assessment. We're getting into April. And just as the final draft was coming together, the first round of the wildlife crossing pilot program grants was announced. I'm going to say WCPP is going forward because it's easier. So for the first round, $111 million was available nationwide, and the applications are due in August of 2023. Next slide. So in our case, we were fortunate that our headquarters team, actually, can you go back a slide? Yeah. Thank you. We're fortunate our headquarters team was on it And they let us know that project readiness was a big factor in being competitive for WCPP grants. So at our district, we were really fortunate that the Wildlife Connectivity Assessment had laid out all these opportunities, and it let us identify a location in Gaviota Pass that was going to fit into the tight time frame of this grant. Another key element in this grant was the requirement of the 20% match. And having that recent study really helped us champion the project to our district asset managers. They're kind of our money overlords. They graciously agreed to incorporate the wildlife crossing into an existing Caltrans shop project in the area that could fund the $2 million match if we got the grant. So next we worked with our headquarters team who coordinated the grant applications for California. And I just have this up to show how amazingly organized they were. It was such a fantastic help to have people who were just politely, but just honest this whole time. So I do have to give them a shout out. Next, in District 5, we had a small but very mighty team of 4 dedicated biologists and 1 amazing transportation planner. And so our first step as a team was to look carefully at the goals of the WCPP program because we wanted to start our process with clarity and alignment with those. And so the goals as shown in order were to reduce wildlife vehicle collisions, to improve habitat connectivity for terrestrial and aquatic species, to save lives and prevent serious injuries, and to protect motorists and wildlife by reducing wildlife vehicle collisions. So, oops, I think, nope, thank you, you're right. So we identified how those federal goals could be met with our proposal. And thanks to the wildlife connectivity assessment, we had a lot of data that helped demonstrate how our project could help reduce wildlife vehicle collisions, including with large mammals, and promote safety, as well as provide connectivity between protected state land, which then connected to large blocks of federal land, which we emphasized, Vandenberg Space Force Base, Los Padres National Forest. We also included benefits to listed federal species as well, because that was also of interest to the federal grant team. Our team met weekly, and I want to say each person became a true project champion. They coordinated across all sorts of disciplines to get detailed information about scope, schedule, budget, preliminary engineering design, climate resilience, and more. And so the project itself went ahead and proposed an undercrossing very similar to the Laurel Curve Highway 17 crossing, because we know that works for deer. And so we included wildlife exclusion fencing as well. And in addition, we proposed placing educational displays at the 2 highway rest stops in Gaviota Pass, and also at the State Park Campground and at the trailheads. US 101 is a highly traffic corridor between LA and San Francisco, so the rest stops are very busy. They get a lot of visitors, and we figured this would provide a great opportunity to educate and connect people to the wildlife in Gaviota Pass, as well as the benefits of wildlife crossings this area. We received a number of support letters, including from Senator Feinstein and Congressman Carbajal, and the Coastal Commission even reached out to us to volunteer to write a letter of support, which was amazing for Caltrans. Yeah, we were very honored. So in December 2023, FHWA announced the grant awards for 19 projects in 17 states, and we were honored to get one for the Gaviota Wildlife Collision Reduction Project. FHWA noted they received 67 applications requesting almost $550 million, which I think shows the high level of interest nationwide, and it really emphasizes the need for expansion of that program. In terms of status, I'll just say we're on schedule thanks to our amazing project development team. We've got a very motivated engineering group that really likes working on this project, so that's a lot of fun. And our project manager says it's his favorite project, which just warms my heart. In terms of challenges, I think staffing is probably the biggest one. Caltrans, we have a lot of people promoting, and so we end up with gaps. And then also just FHWA, some uncertainty in terms of staffing and funding. And so for the last slide, I will say we've been fortunate to keep working with our great people at FHWA. They've been tremendously helpful, as well as the WCPP grant program. I want to say thank you to our Caltrans headquarters and D5 managers for all their support, and our stakeholders. And I want to give a really special thank you to our amazing little grant team, 2 of whom are here. Got Ali Thiel and Larissa Clarke. They were absolute champions, and they did an amazing job of writing this grant. And then finally, I want to thank the ICOET conference for continuing to connect us all and to inspire current and future champions in the field of road ecology. I don't know if there's time for questions.
Yeah, we got time for a couple questions. And thank you so much. That's awesome. And I was wondering, actually, since no hands up, you said you're the first. So what's the secret sauce besides having Larissa and you? What's the secret sauce to, do you think, to getting one of these, if they ever come back, what would you use the way to do it?
So I think from inside Caltrans, I think the trick is to really get your team together, because we've had a great grant team. We had our transportation planner who knew how to go through the grants, how to get the letters of support, but also we very quickly had to assemble basically a small project development team. So we had to hit up asset management really quick and make the cookies and all the things we have to do for asset management. And then once they agreed to the match, then you can get a project manager and a team, because you've got to be able to lay out this whole project. And so it's like a very expedited scoping. But doing that, I will say people get really excited about that. Everybody was really happy to be part of it. But yeah, just that. And I think, again, having the champions, it really is important to have champions for road ecology. I think you probably see that in every group here. And so, yeah, just lighting those fires. And I've got some great fires over there. So thank you.
All right, we have time for one or two questions. You guys have questions?
Oh, and for Shannon, bring Shannon to all of your adventures.
They're great work. I was curious, I've heard a lot about the fish passage efforts that are going on in Gaviota Creek, Southern California, Thiel, yes, it was BC.
Mhm.
I was curious if there was any consideration or overlap with your project and the ongoing efforts that are there. We use CFWs leading those, or Caltrans, I'm not quite certain, but.
Yeah, so it was interesting because when we went through our analysis, there was not as much overlap with Gaviota Creek as we thought there would be. And the locations where there is overlap, the Fish Passage project is separate, and it started several years earlier. It's being run by a different group, but the locations that overlapped are already being addressed by the Fish Passage project. So that project actually it's a tiered document. So it has various segments with improvements identified up the creek. And so the idea is that starting at the lower end, it would be, it's done in tiers. So you've got the lowest one that's programmed. And then I think the idea is that as you moved up the corridor, as funding came available, as partnerships and all that, would move that way. But as a result of that big corridor analysis, we knew that the few locations that overlapped were already included and targets in that particular effort. And so the good thing too about our program is that the Fish Passage program in the last 5 years has really opened up the idea that their fish passage improvements need to include wildlife connectivity. And so they're circling back with us and looking at how you get ledges and just, the spans that are going to support the connections for our terrestrial species as well.
And we definitely leaned into that in our report. So, it's inventoried and it's discussed, and there's details about what they can do opportunistically when they're doing those projects. So, that's something that was really important for us to include.
All right, join me in thanking Morgan and Shannon.
Thank you.